You are listening to the Love Makes a Way podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Hoffman, founder and president of Life Options Network. On this podcast, we will discuss overcoming through Christ and how we as the church can create a culture of life. I look forward to having you with me today. Some really special guests on here today, and I met this couple in actually running club with Beth. They are phenomenal. They have a beautiful story, and as you know, on Love Makes a Way, our goal is to share stories of empowerment in families where Jesus showed up. And so I get to introduce you today to Will and Amy Gregory. They've been married since 2007 and started their journey into parenthood with the birth of their first daughter in 2010. That journey was made especially difficult by the fact that Will struggled in secret with alcoholism and drug addiction, creating deep challenges in their marriage and home. During that time, Amy grew in her dependence on Jesus, learning to trust him even in uncertainty and heartbreak, and ultimately her trust and obedience toward God became the turning point for their family. Today, Will and Amy live with their two daughters, ages 14 and 6. They both work from home and homeschool the girls. They are passionate about sharing their story of how Jesus saved their family and continues to come through even in the face of other major challenges. Hi, friends. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. So you've had quite the journey. And when I first heard Amy, she just kind of started sharing little bits and pieces. And I'm like, wait a minute. What happened? Like, tell me, what's the full story? And it just was incredible to hear how the Lord has transformed you, Will. And even you had an accident as well, which we'll talk to people about as well on the show today. But Will, I want to hear from you first, because I think it's so important that people understand that addiction is not always forever, and that God is capable of healing and restoring. So what was your journey into addiction, and what kind of got you started with that, if you don't mind starting there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that I think a lot of people that are struggling with addiction struggle to answer. Um, I saw many different therapists over the years, and they always asked me, what's the reason for this? What's the cause of this?" I didn't have any of the normal traumas or things that you might associate with that. I I grew up in a loving family, went to private Christian schools, I went to Bible college, and I just I went off the rails simply because my master was how I felt and what I wanted. I said a
Hmm.
prayer at a very young age, and it had no power to change me because there was no submission there.
Sure.
It was it was still all about what I wanted and how I felt, and I wanted to feel a certain way. And
Hmm.
so in order to do that, I had to have, you know, substances and chemicals.
Sure. And I think, yeah, that makes sense that it's just that simple for, I'm sure, a lot of people. So Amy, you're in the midst of this in your marriage. What was that journey like in terms of having to work through just those emotions with you and the Lord and with Will?
Let's see, because I was thinking, yeah, we were married in 2007, and it was May of 2007, and then it was by Christmas of like our first Christmas that year that I quickly noticed and saw like that the the drinking was not like an occasional, just kind of for fun, like social thing. It was more and more and more, um and it can, and it changed who he was, and um so it was pretty scary, and I told him like from the beginning, like when I realized that there was a problem, I told him, I said, I'm not going to be married to an alcoholic.
Hmm.
I mean, I laid it then because it was never in my heart that, like, because when I said I do, I was like, this is forever, but I also knew that it was not okay what he was doing, but it set many years of me really having to get, on my face and get on my knees, before the Lord to have him tell me what to do. And there was a lot of it too. I think I was naive to a lot of it, as well, because I didn't want to believe part of it too. So there was like that deniability somewhat. I was like, oh, he loves me. He would never do this to me,
Right.
But it was just, I had to have the Lord tell me what to do, day in and day out, and come to a place that I really trusted him, because where we were living away from family at the time, and it was just him and I, and then when Amelia was born, it was just the three of us, so I mean, it was scary, but it created a dependence on the Lord like I had never had before, and he had to tell me what to do.
Amy, did you have any support? Like, did you have family, or did you have friends that had maybe had dealt with similar issues with their husband that you could rely on, or was it just flying solo?
Until the end of 2011, it was just us and the Lord, and I can look back, because we were living out of state. Our family's in Tennessee. We were living in North Carolina. And we were going to a church. We had acquaintances. Like I look back and I see the Lord like just walking through so many things and leading and guiding, the church we were at there, it was never where we were supposed to be, but the Lord was so merciful, and just really watched out for us and took care of us like so many times. But no, I didn't have a support there at all, until we moved back to Tennessee when Amelia was almost a year old. And then once we moved back to Tennessee, I had my parents were here, his mom was here, so that definitely helped and changed. And once we were back here too, we started going to church, where the Lord told us to go to church. And Will mentioned too that submission, that was lacking. I look at that and I was like, if we had not gone, and been where he told us to be, we wouldn't be here, because it's so vital to listen and do what the Lord tells you to do. I mean, and there's a lot to unpack with that, but if we were not, if we didn't go where he told us to go to sit under, our pastor and be taught, like we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people that might be listening, I don't know if they understand maybe even what that means, to submit to the Lord. I think we live in a culture that is very, just kind of figured out, self-focused. And what's so cool about knowing Jesus is that the submission really is the protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people miss that when they hear, especially in culture, they hear that word. It's like such a bad word.
Yeah, submission.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, it is. It's your protection, and like everything else that the world throws at you as safety and peace, and it's all not any of that. It's just garbage. So, wow, that's amazing, Amy. So,
because you can't do it on your own. I mean, we're taught this lie, oh, it's the self-help and everything. You can't, like, you can't ever, you're not ever going to be strong enough. You're not ever going to be good enough. Like, you can't depend on yourself. You have to depend on Jesus.
Yep. So good. So, Will, what was the moment for you where you realized, okay, I need to change? How did that go down?
Man, it had been years and years of just back and forth. I'd go into some program and, hey, I'm different. I'm doing better. Consequences would start to lessen, and then I was right back at it. And so after, like I said, years of that, I'm in the hospital again because a lot of times when the police find me curled up behind a dumpster somewhere, I was not fit to go to jail.
Sure.
And so I'm in the hospital again, and Amy comes to me there and says that the Lord told her that she had to leave, that she could not stay with me anymore. And that shook me in a way that nothing else really had, because it forced me to evaluate, or it forced me to recognize that uh, I really did not have any sort of connection or relationship with Christ.
Mm.
I'd spent, if you'd asked me my whole life up to that point, I would have told you, yeah, I'm a Christian, because I said
Sure.
that prayer back when I was 8 years old.
Right.
And, and I went to church. I knew all the stories and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm a Christian, and, whatever that means. But like I said, without that power to cause change in my life, it wasn't there because I had none of the submission. And so when she told me that, and I had that realization, that was also kind of at the same time that I had begun to realize that lie that I kept telling everybody, this is just what I want to do. If I wanted to stop, I would. And I started to realize that I couldn't stop.
Sure.
And that was pretty frightening. And so I went to this, probably the last program in Middle Tennessee that I hadn't flunked out of, Set Free Ranch out in Burns, Tennessee. And it was January 12th, 2016, about 7 p.m. out back of the ranch house out there. And I hit my knees in that field. I had all this, knowledge and Bible school and Christian schools and all that stuff in church, and I didn't even know what to pray at that point. But I knew if I kept doing it the same way, I was going to die.
Sure.
And so I just said, Lord, I said, Jesus, I don't know how to do this, but if you'll help me, I'll do whatever you say. And when I said that and meant it, that I will actually do what you tell me. And I've got to preface this. I used to absolutely hate it with a passion when someone would talk about like this magical moment when Jesus came into their life and everything was made better.
Right.
Like, I would really want to fight somebody over that. And that's exactly what happened. And I understood it in that moment, because this unreasonable peace and joy that had no business being there was suddenly on the inside of me.
Wow.
And I had experienced the presence of God before. I had been around people who exhibited the presence of God, but I'd never felt it on the inside of me before. And so when that happened, I said, every time I had done a drug or drank or anything new that I tried, it was never like, oh, that was nice, I might do that again sometime. Every single time it was, oh, this is the way I need to be all the time.
Yeah.
So, and I would just take off with that. So when the Holy Spirit of God came into the inside of me for the first time in my life, I said, oh, this is the way I need to be all the time. And so I began to, because there was literally nothing else to do in that ranch house, I began to read and find out what I needed to do to be that way all the time. And that was the beginning of actual faith for me. And like you read earlier, it started with Amy's obedience into something that had to be terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it wasn't what she wanted, and I'm just so thankful that she obeyed the Lord in that.
Amen. Wow. That's really powerful. And I think so important for anybody that is an addict to hear that, yes, Jesus is real, and he really is more powerful than any drug or any substance. So beautiful. So now you went back home right away, or you went home after the
No,
program? Okay.
that was a journey. That was, I think, the second night there at the ranch
Oh,
house. So
okay.
I had 30 days left of that.
Okay.
And then, so, I'm sitting there that first week or so, and I'm writing out. I'm flipping through the Bible. I'm finding all the verses on what the Bible has to say about divorce, because I know that's not God's plan. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm gonna build my case, and so I get all these verses and everything about why Amy shouldn't divorce me, and it I don't remember how many. It was maybe 2 or 3 days of that, and I had a solid page and a half, and I thought it was gold. And I hear the Lord plainly uh, in my spirit. He said, "You can't use any of that." It's like, Lord, and and he said, "You can't use any of that. That's not up to you anymore." He said, "She's gonna put," and I don't know how to describe it, because it's not like I heard an audible voice, but I know I heard him tell me, "She's gonna put papers in front of you. Don't read them. Sign them." And I'm thinking, Lord, that's not what I got into this for. That's not what I signed up for. And that's probably the biggest, uh, or maybe the second biggest moment, was that right there, that first test. He said, "Well," I said, "I do whatever he said, you know." And I said, "All right, Lord." But I was still praying, for to not be divorced. And he stopped me from that. He said, "No, you can't believe me for that. That's not up to you anymore. Instead, trust me."
Hmm.
And so instead of praying, "Lord, please, thank you for, restoring my marriage and everything," I just said, "Lord, I'll trust you with any outcome. No matter what the
Mhm.
outcome is, I trust you." And that's one of the biggest things that I get to with some of the guys, like when I go to the jail or places like that, where I tell them, "I don't know what it looks like for you to serve Jesus, because I've got all this fruit of, he restored my marriage and my family, and blessed us with a home of our own. But I don't know what that looks like for you, because that was never
Mhm.
the point. Because every time before, when I focused on the result I wanted, it led me right back into the same trap.
Sure.
And so my focus had to stay on, I trust him, because he's really all I need."
Yeah.
And so he broke me of that, you know, desire for anything but him, and it set me free. And so coming out of this program, I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, so to speak. I don't know what my next step is. I don't have anywhere to go. I had burned every bridge of every relationship under the sun. And, my mom and her husband let me stay with them for about a week, uh, to kind of get my feet under me, and try to start working out a job and a place to stay and things like that. And uh, in that time, my aunt and uncle decided they had a room available and they would let me stay there, even knowing my history and everything like that. And so the Lord worked that out. And I went and applied everywhere in Lebanon, I think. Uh, and they all loved me. I'm decently well spoken. I clean up pretty nice, or so I'm told. And they all loved me, and they wanted to hire me until they saw my background report.
Sure.
I said, "We can't hire this guy." I had got all kinds of theft and trespassing and, arrests and things like that. And so I couldn't find the job. The only places that would hire me were PFG and Stephen Sons, which they are known for hiring lots of, you know, uh, people, with that type of background. But they both require that you work on Sunday. And I was like, "Lord, I don't believe I can work on Sunday. And you're going to have to provide a way for me to do something else." And it was, I think, the next day, one of the guys from our church called me up and said, "Hey, the Lord put you on my heart. Do you need a job?"
Wow, I love that.
Like, "I sure do." And so I started cutting down trees with them, which is not something that I had ever thought I would uh, get into. And it so I'm working with these two gentlemen, both strong Christians, and able to pour into me as I'm taking these first steps into faith. He just worked all of that out. Now,
Yeah.
Amy did put divorce papers in front of me,
Mhm.
and I did sign them. there is a 90-day waiting period before a judge will sign off on those to make them final. And it wasn't
because we had a
even,
child.
yeah,
Sure.
and it wasn't even 60 days. Um, and she can probably tell you a little bit better about that. But before the Lord had just worked so much on my behalf, and he began the process of healing our marriage and uh, restoring the relationships with my parents, with her parents, and just putting back together everything that I had broken over the last 10 years. And he did it in less than 2 months.
Wow.
Wow. Amy, what was that like for you? He's out of rehab and he has a job, but you're still thinking, well, but we have divorce papers signed. Like, how hard or how easy was it to start trusting him again and saying, well, maybe this time will be different?
Well, at first, I was honestly, from the moment, it was not ever what I wanted to do. And I did want to come back and touch on that how important it is, to make sure that what you do is what the Lord tells you to do, because, I don't want to ever give a blanket statement of, well, if your husband's addicted, then you have a right to leave him. Like, that's not a blanket statement. Like, it has to be, the Lord has to tell you what to do, because he hates divorce, and had he not come to me, because I was fasting and I was praying, this time, because, he was gone for I don't know how many, time it was, I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do, because it was tearing up our daughter, him being in and out and in and out, and never, her safety, I mean, like, and it had been a long time, even before that she was even, alone with him, stuff like that, just because it just was not safe,
Sure.
I mean, and so once the Lord told me, okay, you have to leave, again, it was not what I wanted to do, but I had such a peace because it was what he said to do. It was really surreal, like really, really odd, like the thing that you never want to do, but you had, anyway, because it was just from the Lord. So I had I had checked out, like really, like I had disconnected myself emotionally from him because of that, because I could not go do it anymore. I could not go through it anymore. And I was like, nope. Yes, like we are moving forward now. Things are going to be better. We're going to be stable, and we're just going to watch the Lord work this out. So, when, I was done, and I had not talked to him except for, I don't know, he reached out once, like during the 30 days, like the first day or something while he was there at the ranch. And it was a very like quick and just surface phone call. And then I was like, gotta go, bye. And I didn't hear from him again. It was over a month, and I wasn't planning on talking to him or hearing or, from him or anything. And one day I get this phone call and I don't recognize the number. And, but I pick up the phone and I can hear, like, I can tell by the voice it's him, but even his voice, like, it was him, but he was completely different.
Wow.
Like, I could tell just in his, like, by talking to in his voice, he was he was completely different, and I was like, who, who are you? Like, I was still like, so he was just kind of updating me with what was going on. But I was still like, okay, that's great. You do that, I'll have papers and you can sign them, I was still in that mindset. And our friend that talked to him about the job for the trees, like, would periodically just kind of keep me updated, like on how he was doing, even after papers were signed and things like that. Just, I don't know, I think maybe because, he was, I guess, hopeful of stopping that and us getting back together, but whatever it was. And the Lord started to work on me, and was telling me, he was like, okay, just see, and a few months went by, and the Lord was like, was starting to impress on my heart to let him see Amelia again, because he hadn't seen her in months, because I, again, thinking about her. And so the Lord was like, gave me like benchmarks of like things he needed to do and had to do, in order to be able to see her again. And he would start, like, he started passing those, like, he, with his, like, with his driver's license and with fines and with, just this and that and this and that. And he just kept like checking off like all of those things till, finally I was like, okay, I was like, we'll meet at the park, and she can see you. And so they did, and it was precious, I don't remember how long she held on to him. But still, I was just like, it was one of those, again, just Lord, he had to tell me what to do, because I was still out. Like I was just out. I was done, and he just, I was praying one day and he just laid it on my heart and he said, don't let them, he was telling me, he's like, don't let them finalize the papers yet. To which I was like, what? Like, like, Lord, like, I'm all in here. We're doing this. We're moving on. Like, but it was, again, and I had to listen to what he said, because, he just brought me to that place that I was like, Lord, where I really want what he wants more than what I want. Yeah. And, so, we did, and I just kept watching, and it was July, I think. Yeah, it was July of that year, still 2016, that the Lord was like, yeah, where the Lord was like, okay, he can stay. Like, this is what I want to do. And so we went from January, like we were getting divorced, to, through July of, like, he's back seeing Amelia, like he's allowed back, in the house, like he's, back around the family, going to, church with me, like, January to July. And it was just like, again, it was just so much. I was like, Lord, I trust you. It was scary, but I was also really thankful, because I was like, how can I not? I was like, he, again, came back a completely different person. Like, it was very evident. There was a root, there was a heart change.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love how the Lord restores things. It's so fun and amazing. And so he was home, and we have a few minutes, but he was home, and you guys healed over time, it sounds like, once he came home.
Yeah.
So from there, so you're working at now this arborist job,
Right.
and you're working on trees and all of that, and something happened. So tell us the story there, and what God did even in that for you guys.
Yeah, that's been a ride also. I was one of the climbers for the tree service, and so I was about 25 feet up in one of the trees in Nashville, and we're not 100% sure what happened. I think the log that I was dropping got tangled in my lines somewhere, and it actually pulled me through a Y in the tree that I was not able to actually fit through.
Wow.
So it broke most everything on my right side, and um, including my back in 2 places. And so I don't remember any of that. I remember the sensation of falling, and then I remember waking up on the ground, and um, I'm laying there, and I've got this, it feels like I'm laying on something in my back, like there's something like stabbing me back there,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't figure out how to move to get like to roll over or something. And as I began to realize that I couldn't move my legs, I was I started to panic a little bit. It's pretty terrifying. And all of a sudden, it was like just this wave just kind of washed over me. And it was, wait a minute, I've been through worse than this. Jesus, Jesus rescued me out of way worse than any kind of
Yeah.
physical condition.
Yeah.
And
Amen.
and just instantly, I had this peace that you know uh, comes from absolutely nowhere else. And I mean, it still hurt,
Sure.
but I was not terrified, and I was actually ended up telling my testimony to the EMTs on the way to Vanderbilt in the back of the ambulance,
Wow.
explaining to them what the Lord had done for me already and how this
So
was no big
powerful.
deal for him.
Yeah.
And so we've watched him just every step of the way, from absolute favor with the workers' comp insurance to just things working out in ways that could only have been him. Because
Wow.
you hear all these horror stories about the struggle to get things approved and to just to get anything done, and we haven't experienced any of that. I mean, beyond all that, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead, the same power that purchased my freedom from drug addiction, purchased my healing from my physical body. And I firmly believe that by the stripes that wounded Jesus, I am healed and made whole.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
And it sounds crazy to people. I've had people get irritated with me over that, especially some of the nurses and doctors, because they were a captive audience. I
Sure.
was in the hospital for a long time, and felt like a long time anyway, and then rehab after that, and so they just had to sit there and take it. And I was just telling them about Jesus, and and so that was great. But I had a few of them ask me, it's like, why are you so happy all the time? It's like, oh, well, let me tell you.
Tell you the story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and then so Amy, so he came home and life was a little different for you and your daughter, and how was that whole transition for you?
Um, so after he comes home from the accident and everything,
Yeah.
you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, a lot of it was, there was a lot of differences. It was definitely, an adjustment, but I just remember first being just thankful that he was alive, because at one point, because his boss, from the tree company, um, has been in situations, is former military, and seen, he's, he's seen people die,
Sure.
and he's been around when people die, and he was very, he knows what that looks like, he knows what that sounds like. And that was one of the things he told me. He said, Amy, he said he fell, he was dead.
Wow.
Like he said, I heard it. He said he was dead,
Hmm.
but I'm just so thankful, because he went over, and he laid his hands on him, and and he spoke and he commanded, and when he did, like, Will took a breath again.
Wow. Praise
And
God.
so I was just like so thankful that he was just alive,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
um you know honestly, like, it was, again, there were parts of it that were kind of scary, but there's there's a kind of a backstory with it, though, with this part of it that I know we don't have time for. But the Lord, took this, he took what the devil meant for evil in this accident and completely turned it around for good, and because, you know, I had been I had been afraid of some things leading up to this because at this point we had just had our second daughter. Um, and actually, the day that Will fell was my first day back at work from maternity leave.
Oh,
Um, and, so like at the end of the day, I'm getting the call, and I was like, you know, like just in kind of shock and disbelief, but um, it, at the same time, like I just remember he was with us like every step of the way because he was just gave us peace every step of the way because, he took a situation that I was terrified of during my pregnancy and completely worked the situation really to just, black the devil's eye. And he made it so I could be home, and like because of like this, the Lord made a way,
I love
that
that.
I can be home now with my kids and with my husband. And, um, and I love how the Lord works. And
Yeah.
so he just walked with us and, took care of us like every step of the way, like while he was in the hospital, while he was in rehab, like, we had to move out for a little while they were doing renovations on our home, for the modifications for Will. And, the Lord just did every bit of it.
I love
And,
that.
it's different, there's
Sure.
definitely different things, but I'm just thankful. Like,
Yeah.
I can't not be thankful, for what he did.
Wow.
As I watch your family, like you're in the middle of a miracle, right? In the middle of just believing God that he's going to completely restore Will. And what would your advice be for other families that are really like in the middle, in the waiting period of seeing the promises fulfilled?
Um, for me, I would say the devil wants to make you think that believing is hard, that it's hurting you somehow to keep believing for something that you don't see. Like you have to flex some muscle that you don't have just a little harder. If I believe just a little harder, I'll get what I'm asking for. That's not it at all. Believing is rest. I am resting in the certainty, the expectation that Jesus will do what he said because he
Amen.
can't lie. And there's rest and there's peace in that. My enemy is the one that wants to come and lie to me and tell me that, oh, this is hard, this is hurting you. It'd be easier and better if you would just accept things the way they are. It's like, how is that better?
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem better,
Right.
but that's the one of the biggest things that the Lord has shown me through that is that it's not hard to believe. You have an enemy, and he wants you to think it's hard.
Yeah. Well, what an honor to have you on here today. Both of you are just some of the most amazing people in your heart towards the Lord. And clearly, the work God has done is very inspiring and beautiful. And I'm just excited for other families who might be going through something similar to hear this and be encouraged. So, thank you guys for being with us today on Love Makes a Way.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Love Makes a Way. If you would like to support Life Options Network, you can go to lifeoptionsnetwork.org/donate.